You're watching E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Share and subscribe.
Hey guys, welcome to Entertainment Talk Nation. This is Rob. This video, we're going to have a discussion that we've actually had a long time ago, and I kind of want to revisit it because I actually had a conversation with somebody the other day that kind of brought it up, and it's in regards to other kaiju outside of the ones that we're getting and how they could work in the current universe. And as you guys know, if you've seen my older content, I've always said that as much as I love those other monsters, they necessarily wouldn't work. And not because they don't fit into the whole monster genre. That's not what I mean. But mainly from a business perspective as to why we would never see these monsters. And, you know, it's funny. When I've had this conversation before, like, I'll bring up Godzilla as a good example because that's a monster that comes up a lot, or cyborg, or robot if you want to say. But that's one kaiju that comes up a lot when we talk about the legendary universe. And a lot of people have always tried to make their argument as to why it would work so well. And I've always tried to counter that, and the thing of it is, it's funny because I actually love Godzilla. You know, any of you guys who have been here since the channel started know that I'm a huge Godzilla fan, especially a fan of the 70s Godzilla design. And yeah, it does kind of hurt me to say that, you know, but you know, when I think of these other monsters, these other kaiju, and I think about where Godzilla is now, how successful so far the Legendary series has been, and where they want to take it, and what kind of choices they have to make, I really try to put myself in the seat of the person making the decisions. And when I put myself in that position, I start to kind of logically figure out why these other kaiju can't work. Either they just can't work because of how they look or how they were developed, or because from a business standpoint, they don't fit. And it's funny because I get so much resistance from this, from many of you, and I completely understand it, that I think sometimes it's hard for people to kind of see why. I think a lot of people think I'm doing it because I don't like the monster, or because I'm being a prick, or because I just, you know, for whatever reason, they just think, they take it as a negative. You know what I mean? And it's not negative. It's just when you have these other monsters, for example, my argument for Godzilla is the fact that if you're going to make a huge robot to fight Godzilla, you're not going to make a giant robot Godzilla. You'll try and design something similar to what we see in Pacific Rim. It makes more sense. But the other reason, and this is one thing I didn't mention in my other videos, but the other reason, or if I did, I just never got into real much detail. But primarily the other reason is business decisions. The kaiju genre is not popular. It's not. It's popular. Right now, the popular is solid enough to give us a foundation for other kaiju movies. But I mean, when you compare it to Marvel or even DC, as bad as their movies are, those guys are going to make much more money. Right now, the comic book genre is like through the roof. You know what I mean? Kaiju have made a strong comeback, a lot stronger than I think many of us could ever think. To the point that a lot of us are just giddy about it. You know, we want to see all these monsters. Oh, I would love to see this monster remastered and this and that. And a lot of people argue, like, for example, somebody once asked me, oh, do you think Legendary could do their own version of Gamera? And I said, no, that would be ridiculous. Nobody would watch that. Not because I hate Gamera, not because Gamera sucks as a kaiju, but the general person is going to find the idea of a flying turtle with rocket boosters coming out of his ass to be comical. It's not going to be taken seriously enough to have any success. And then people always say, well, I don't understand how people could believe or watch a talking raccoon and stuff like that. And I get it. But the reason people will watch a talking raccoon versus a flying turtle is because that talking raccoon is surrounded by humanoid characters that make it more believable because of the interaction. That's one. Number two, while Guardians of the Galaxy was never the most popular comic book in the world, it did have a cult following. It's under a brand that has already been established. So people will see the movie just because of the brand, because of the popularity of the brand. That's a big factor. A lot of people said that Guardians of the Galaxy was a big risk for Marvel, and it was, and lucky enough for them, it paid off. But there's no interaction that Gamera could have with anything that's going to make him any more, it's going to make him believable. The reason people are into Godzilla is because he's a brand. You understand what I'm getting at? People know him. Even people who are not huge Kaiju fans or huge Godzilla fans know who Godzilla is. He's been, referenced to, or he's been, had cameos, unwittingly or indirectly in other films, from jokes. It's that one scene in the Pee-wee's Big Adventure when they're chasing him, and there's that Godzilla movie being filmed. There's stuff like that. Gamera doesn't have that kind of notoriety. Gamera doesn't have that kind of exposure. That's the example. So when you combine business decision along with thinking about what will work in the public eye, that's why you're not going to see a lot of these monsters. Gamera, in his case, would be the fact that to the general public, it's going to look ridiculous. Mechagodzilla, not because he looked ridiculous to the general public, but because it doesn't make sense for our military, as advanced as they are, or even the world, scientists, to make a giant robot that would be just as slow and just as methodical as the real thing. They're going to want to make something that maybe can match his strength, but with some agility. So that's the kind of thing you got to think of. And I think what happens is people, in our mind, it works, because we're such fans. In our mind, everything makes sense because we're fans. It took me like a year to kind of separate my giddiness of being a kaiju fan from logic, business logic. And from a business standpoint, it doesn't make sense to have a lot of these monsters, not because necessarily they won't fit, some of them because they can't fit, but some of them also because it's just not a smart business decision. Even with the monsters we're getting, I'd be very surprised if we ever got a solo movie for any other three, like Rodan, Ghidorah, and Mothra. And these are monsters that were taken because they are familiar. They're probably the next most familiar monsters outside of Godzilla because they had a lot of exposure here in the States. Mothra had a bunch of movies. She had her own solo movie. She had a bunch of movies against Godzilla. She's had her own trilogy. Rodan had his own movie, and Rodan's been in a number of movies with Godzilla. Ghidorah had his debut movie that was with Rodan, Godzilla, and Mothra. So, these are monsters that have had a lot of exposure. Yes, Gamera had exposure over here in the States, but not nearly as much as Godzilla. So those are the things you got to take into account. So when I say that these monsters can't work, I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I might come off that way. Remember, I'm typing or I'm talking, stuff like that. You really can't tell someone's emotions when they're texting or writing messages. But I'm trying to, it's not because I don't like the monsters. It's not because I'm being a prick. It's because from a business standpoint, it doesn't work. Whether it's a story, whether it's just thinking about the market share. Will the majority of the market latch onto this monster like they latched on to Godzilla? Likely, no. No. All you have is Kong and Godzilla. That's why they're pitting the two against each other. So, and right now, those are the two monsters. They both have very successful films. Godzilla did well. Kong is doing even better. Overall, Kong has made more money already. So if you're making $530 million, which is what Godzilla made, and right now I think Kong is up to 561. What are the chances you make a Gamera movie and it makes more than that? It's very slim. It's very slim. Right now, you have an audience, you have their attention. Keep going with what works. Keep going with what works. Think about originality for a second. Pacific Rim, which we all love, most of us, and is a cool fucking movie. It didn't do well. It didn't do well at all. So, I mean, as much as, oh, yeah, we could argue it made so much money in Japan, or excuse me, overseas, but overall it didn't do well. And those are monsters that the general audience has never seen. So you throw in other monsters into the mix that the general audience has never seen, it's not going to work. And think about it, because the person I was talking, it was Jonathan Ware, by the way, from The Nation. John, thank you. We had this conversation the other day. And the other thing, because he made an argument that, well, you know, if you bring a solid cast and this and that, and a good story, maybe it'll work. And my response to that was Pacific Rim. He had a renowned director in Guillermo del Toro. Excuse me. Was it del Toro? No, I'm thinking about Benicio del Toro. I think it is Guillermo del Toro. Fuck it. Be that as it may, you guys know who I'm talking about. A very good director, had a solid cast. The girl who played Mako, her name, once again, Rust. But she was a bit of a star from where she came from. You know, you had the other gentleman who's, again, he's going to be in King Arthur. His name escapes me, but he's at that time he was up and coming. So that even goes to show, even with a good cast and a great director and a decent story, some great effects and some great action, they don't always work. The kaiju genre is not as popular as we think it is. To us, it's everything we love, right? It's in our hearts. But don't let all that blind you from a business perspective on logic. When I'm making business, even if it was me, I'm going to keep it real. I would not do a Gamera movie. I would not bring Baragon and all these other monsters into the fold. Wouldn't make money. And the only chance you have of making money by bringing those other monsters in is throwing Godzilla into the mix. And if you do that, then Godzilla becomes like Batman. He's just fucking everywhere. You know what I mean? And then, you know, for us, yeah, but for general fans, they'll get tired of it. You know, just like right now, like Batman, he has a huge fan base. So obviously they could throw him into anything. He's going to do fine. But the fan base for Godzilla is very small. You know what I mean? And we're not going to get tired of him, obviously. But the majority of the people that do actually enjoy him and are mild fans, or fans a bit more than mild, but not as intense as us, they'll get tired of it. It's like Godzilla's in every fucking movie. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm going. Try to see it from a business standpoint. You know, I thought it was an interesting discussion me and John had, because he was referring to, and I can't pronounce the name of this particular kaiju, but it wasn't a very popular one. But it's the giant stone samurai. It starts with a D. I'm not going to try and say his name, because I'm not going to try and pronounce that. Because I butcher all names. You guys know that. And he had asked me if something like that would work, and I told him never, not at all. Never work. Nobody knows who the fuck that is. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows who he is. You know, some of you probably are like, who the fuck's he talking about? And some of you, I'm sure, know very much who I'm talking about. So, you know, look, in a perfect world, man, it'd be great. It'd be great if we could have these monsters and have, you know, Baragon and Anguirus and all these monsters come around. And some of them do work from a design standpoint and what they can do. But they're just not popular enough. And then some of them won't work because it would be ridiculous. You know what I mean? It would be ridiculous. You know, I think about monsters. I think about monsters that would work too. Like, I always thought, man, Titanosaurus would be a great monster to put into the series. As goofy and as annoying as he was, I think he's one of the few monsters that fit perfectly into the Legendary series, with a nice redesign, a water monster. Imagine a nice underwater fight with Godzilla and Titanosaurus. So, I mean, but nobody knows who the fuck Titanosaurus is. You know what I mean? People know who Ghidorah is. So it's like, holy shit, Ghidorah. You know, people know who Mothra is. You know what I mean? And I'm talking people outside of the hardcore kaiju fans. I'm talking about the general kaiju fan or even the general fan who likes monster romp movies. They know who Ghidorah is, who Mothra is. Some of them be like, Titanosaurus, the fuck is that? Or they'll be like, isn't that the monster from... That's the kind... Once you get that reaction from a fan when you're making a monster film, you're done. You're done. You're done. So that's all. And remember, not only does Legendary want the Godzilla universe to succeed, and obviously they do, us as fans want it to succeed. So you don't want to throw too much into the mix. You know, there's an old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right now, you got a solid Godzilla movie, you had a solid Kong movie, and they're putting in some other monsters that have some clout. Let's not break it. Let's leave it the way it is. Let's not start looking for Mechagodzilla and Gamera and fucking, you know, Anguirus and stuff like that. It would be fantastic. And if I had to rewrite the world, I would have all those monsters in the Legendary series and every movie would make $200 billion worldwide. But that's not the world we live in. So enjoy what you're getting, man. You're getting some good shit. Kong was fantastic. It's made a great amount of money. Godzilla 2014 was great. It made a great amount of money. We got another Godzilla movie coming out in less than 2 years. That's going to make a lot of money and it's going to be fantastic. And then we got the two kings going at it in 2020. Let's just take what we got, man. It's going to be good shit. And don't lose hope. You never know. If it gets to be that big, if they start making more, the more money they make, I see the more gambles they'll take. Put it that way. So let's get to the theaters. Let's support the movies they're making so we can get more of them. And who knows, you might get that one-off Mothra or one-off Rodan movie, or you might get a surprise cameo from an Anguirus one day. It all depends. It's all about the Benjamins. And it's not that these companies are selling out or they're out to make money. There's nothing wrong with them wanting to make money. Them making money gives us more movies, so it's not a bad thing. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's all about the money. What about the fans? They have to have balance. On one hand, yes, you want to please the fans, but not at the expense of making money, because making money is what continues to produce films. So that's that. That's my current take on the whole, what about this kaiju argument? It's not always about that they won't fit. Sometimes it's their popularity that doesn't make them fit. And sometimes it's about their look and potential story that doesn't make them fit. And sometimes it's both. So anyway, guys, that's it for this long-winded video. See, I'm rusty. I used to keep them shorter than 17 minutes. It's fucking ridiculous. All right, guys. That's it for this video. This is Rob signing off for E.T.N, where we don't do news. We just talk entertainment. Take it easy.
Thank you for watching E.T.N. You can follow E.T.N on Facebook, Twitch or Twitter, or join the Nation Facebook page. Don't forget to click that subscribe button on your way